Hello everybody. In my presentation I'm going to talk about Status Event Free, Introduction to Probability, which is a unit I'm a lecturer in charge of, and in particular it's time to review given the new knowledge that we have got in this unit. Let's start with some information about the unit. The unit is about probability with elements of statistics and mathematics. And the target of the unit, or better, the students that enroll in these units, come from different backgrounds and interests. So usually statistics is not their main interest in their studies. The unit is divided in 5 modules, 2-3 weeks each. And the content is delivered in a very traditional way, so PowerPoint lectures and tutorials in a PC lab. The assessment plan, again, is quite intensive and it sees in-class tests, quizzes that are done on iLearn usually, and a final exam that gathers for 50% of the unit marks. There are no group activities in Status Event Free at all. There are a few problems that I want to talk about in my unit, and the first one is the engagement, which has several consequences. I have written here low engagement, and probably a better description would be declining engagement. Something is changed in the cohort of students that are taking my unit, and more students are now taking a surface learning approach. This has a few consequences, like low performance every time I ask them to think, to re-elaborate the information that I try to transmit to them, and a few students that are falling behind in the first few weeks of the unit. It looks like they just don't study at all. Another problem, different nature, this one, is not, it doesn't depend by the students, is that the soft skills are not developed at all. This is not really a problem, it's more like a missing point in a unit like this, where I think soft skills should be part of the curriculum. It can be interesting to have a look at the formal feedback that I receive every semester. In general, it is quite positive, but it is also true that the cohort of students that I have is divided in 2 groups. The first that is composed by students that are very good, and so they are usually happy with the unit, but there is a group which I can quantify in like 30%, which are very weak. What have they to say about the unit? Well, for example, we do review the notes, but cannot do the test questions very well. So this student is telling me that he made everything he could, everything he was requested to do, but still the outcome is not positive. So obviously he thinks the fault is not his, and probably is right. Where is the problem here? This is the first question. Second comment, his class tests are different from the sample put on iLearn. Every semester I put one or a couple of examples of past tests, real tests. And this student is complaining that the questions are not the same, or at least are not very similar. Now, what is missing, the point that is missing, is that what I'm testing is his capacity to reformulate the theory that is learning to solve problems. This is not a message that passed through. But of course, I can't blame students. So let's try to get a pedagogical, consistent approach to the problem. And I want to start from Biggs' constructive alignment. Biggs identifies good pedagogical practice in the alignment of curriculum, teaching methods, learning environment, and assessment. Now, the question that I have to answer is, are all these elements aligned? Which is, do you have a curriculum which is consistent with the teaching methods and with the assessment and teaching methods are appropriate for the assessment? A good point to start with are the intended learning outcomes, which will be abbreviated like ILO in the next slides. Biggs highlights the important point that a clear and careful is important in this sentence, a careful definition of the learning outcomes is the foundation on which teaching practices and assessment can be designed. So, could poor alignment be the problem that I see in Status 7.3, or at least one of the problems? I want to show you some of the current learning outcomes that are published in the study guide. Of course, students don't read this, and we don't highlight their importance, so there is a problem here. But let's have a look. The first one says that one of the goals, a learning outcome, would be having a solid understanding of introductory probability theory. What does this mean? It really doesn't understand anything, because no students will really come out from my unit with a solid understanding if solid understanding is defined by a statistician. My unit is a soft one, is not a very mathematical intensive one. So what does this mean? There is no definition of solid understanding, so this is completely meaningless. Let's see the second one. For various discrete and continuous random variables, be familiar with the distribution, solve probability problems. Again, what does this mean? Probability problems of what level? Very easy, okay, everyone can do that. Or very difficult, probably no one can do that. Those are the probability problems that I give them in the tests and the exam. But looking at the learning outcome, a student can't really understand what is going to be required to do. So again, this one is useless for a student. Finally, students will build their knowledge starting from the basic idea of probability. At the end, they will be able to solve complex problems in a creative way. Well, I can tell you this is very nice to write, and is something that every teacher hopes, but is not what they are taught. So again, a failure in the learning outcomes. So, are the learning outcomes, the teaching methods, and the assessment in Status 7.3 aligned? Well, lectures are focused on the theory. This is where they start from, always, for every topic. And then they present a few applications, but more than application, there are a few problems which are completely theoretical, or anyway, problems that no one is interested in, like die problems or cards problems. They can be even unethical in some cultures. So there is a problem in how the lectures deliver the material, given that the assessment is completely focused on problem-solving skills and not on theory. There are no theoretical questions during the assessment. All the problems, all the exercises are, can you solve this problem? This is what students are asked for. So the learning outcomes, the teaching methods, and the assessment are not aligned. There is then the need to design new learning outcomes. And this is probably a good opportunity to decrease the number of topics, which is a problem that always is highlighted in students' feedback. The new learning outcomes will focus on problem solving. So what students will be able to do instead of what students will be taught. At this stage, we are ready to make our recommendation for improvement. And I want to start with one of the problems of Status 7.3, which is motivation. So Biggs and Tang divide motivation into 4 categories: extrinsic, social, achievement, and intrinsic motivation. Right now, Status 7.3 focuses mainly on extrinsic motivation, so the outcome. There is an opportunity to increase the importance of all the other motivation, and we can start especially with the intrinsic motivation. So we want to make what students do relevant to their studies, to their interests. To do this, we are going to change the lectures and the curriculum in general, introducing three important elements: case-based studies, group works and presentations, and we will link the lectures with the tutorials. Right now they are not linked. They focus on the same topics, but there is not a clear link, at least in the eyes of students. There is a vast literature on problem-based teaching and motivation in education. For example, the concept of apprenticeship has been extended by Collins, applying the cognitive apprenticeship in math. Of the anchored instruction has been a topic on which several authors focused, in particular Adams. In 1988 was writing that when students learn new information while solving a problem, they are more likely to use it to solve other problems, which is exactly what we need in Status 7.3. About motivation, self-determination, several studies have linked intrinsic motivation, which is what we want to increase, to positive academic performance. So the content will now be delivered not based on theory, but based on case studies. And the theory will be in support of them. Case-based studies will not used only to introduce the theory, but they will be used in group work as well. There are several reasons to do this, and again, there is a vast literature on that. For example, we can have a look at the social cognitive theory, which, by the way, highlights the importance of motivation in education. And with this, one of the goals is the development of soft skills. Now, how can group work with diverse cohort like the one that compose my students? There are several units that take advantage of my lectures. Status 7.3 is the principal one, but Stat A30 Bioinformatics and Stat A63, a new unit in the Master of Statistics, will be cohort of students that study the same content. To make the content interesting to them, I want to develop streams, which is case-based studies relevant to the different cohorts. They can be economics or biology or psychology, different levels, undergraduate, postgraduate, bioinformatics, of course. The goal will be to have case-based studies that are relevant to the single cohorts. And the output of group work will be presentations, like the one that I'm giving now, and with a peer review assessment, so that students can learn from and evaluate their peers. Finally, the link between lectures and tutorials. Well, there will be different stages of the same learning activity. So we will use the same case-based studies during the lectures and during the tutorials with different goals. During lectures, there will be the analysis and the theoretical interpretation solution of a case study. During the tutorials, there will be the practical solution, which is the implementation using a computer to find the result. Even if presentation will be assessed, case studies and group work probably wouldn't work if changes are not done to the final exam. So in the final exam, there will be contributions, questions about case studies and presentation that have been particularly relevant during the year. The last slide is about how can we evaluate the recommended changes. Well, Participation is something that I'm particularly interested in. Participation and engagement. I don't want to see students falling behind in the very few weeks. I want them to participate and to be engaged with the unit activities and the unit content. Performance in the final exam. This is a difficult topic. Right now, many students struggle in the final exam. And the reason is because they don't reach deep learning. Asking them to do during the year will be a way to make them more aware of their preparation. They can realize they can complete the required task instead of the current situation, which is, I think I understood the theory, but I can't solve the questions during the test or during the exam. Finally, as usual, feedback from students will be used to calibrate all these changes. In the next slide, there is the bibliography. Thank you.